Hello. In this video I'm going to show you how to create a console app in Visual Studio. I'm going to work through example 3, or I'm sorry, figure 3.18 in your textbook there on page 78. So first thing I'm going to do is go in and create a new project just like we normally do. It pops up this new project dialog box. So again, we're making sure we're in Visual C#. Windows operating system is our target here, and then here in the middle we're going to make sure we've got a console application. Before we had the Windows Form application, now we're doing the console application. So we're going to name this add two numbers, and basically in figure 3.18 in the book is prompting the user to enter in two numbers, storing those in variables, adding to two numbers, storing that into a different variable, and then printing out the results. So first thing you'll notice when we create a console app, there is no form. There's no visual form here, so there's no need to use the toolbox at all. That's why the toolbox contains no usable controls here, because the program we're creating doesn't run in a form. I'm going to delete these three using statements. I'm going to just leave the system one. I can leave them in there and it works just fine. Again, this system is a namespace that contains quite a few classes. The class we're going to be using here is the console and the convert class, and these classes contain functions that that do some useful things for us without us having to do everything ourselves. First thing I'm going to do is go over here and I'm going to rename the file that our code is going to be contained in. Actually, let me just click on the file, which is program.cs, and we're going to rename that addition.cs. It's going to ask me if I want to rename any other references to it, and I'm going to click yes. And basically what that's doing is just changing our class name to match our file name, so our class becomes addition as well. And that's a good practice. If you've got just one class in a file, they should have the same name. In a console app, Visual C# is looking for a method called main with a capital M. That's where it knows to start execution. So we're going to go inside of this main method, and this is where we're going to start putting our code. The first thing we want to do is we want to prompt the user to enter in the numbers. And by prompting, we mean give a little message to the user, letting them know exactly what you want them to do. And the way we'll do that, we'll just do it with just a simple write statement, just explaining what we want the user to do. Please enter first number. Put a little colon there and a couple of spaces, kind of make it neat. Then the way we're going to read information in from the screen, and we need to store it somewhere. So we need to create a variable, which is just a place out in the memory of the computer that we give a name to, so that we can store information that we may need later. So here I'm going to create a variable called number1. When you create a variable, you have to give it a type. In this case, it's an integer, which means a whole number, and then a description. Number1 is our description for the name of the variable, and you want your variable names to be meaningful, as in descriptive in what that variable actually contains. It's not a requirement of C# or anything, but it's nice to have useful names so that you know exactly what's in these variables. So we want this, and we're going to assign number1 to be equal to whatever we read in that the user has typed in. So when the user will see a prompt that says please enter first number, they'll enter a number and press enter. This console.read line will read that information that the user typed in and store it wherever we tell it to. We're telling it to store it in number 1. Now you see we've got a little error here, and basically what this is saying is read line only reads string. So you can type in numbers, but it converts it to a string version of that number. And we're trying to store that string into a variable that can contain only integers. So we have to have a way to convert it into an integer. Luckily in this system namespace there's another class named convert, and it has a method called toInt32. And what toInt32 does is it converts whatever you give it, in this case console.readline, it'll give us a string, it'll convert that string, if it has only valid digits in it, into an integer, a 32-bit integer, which can be stored into our variable here. So when you see int, it's actually referring to a 32-bit signed integer, and that's what toInt32 does, converts that string into an integer. So we need to get 2 numbers in, and the way we get our second one is pretty similar. So I'm just going to copy and paste it. Just make some modifications. And I need to create another variable, because if I store it back in number 1 again, then I've lost track of what was put in there the first time. So let's create another variable called number 2. And that's where we'll store this second one in. I'm also going to go ahead and create a variable called sum, and from its name you can guess what it probably contains. So I'm going to say sum equals number 1 plus number 2. Plus symbol is how we add. We got whatever's in the value of the variable number 1, we're going to add to that whatever's in the variable number 2 and take that result and store it into the sum variable. Now the last part is display out to the user what the result was. I'm going to use a write line for that. The sum of the 2 numbers is, and I'll put a placeholder here, and again you read about that in the book, but basically what a placeholder does, it's a way to help us format things, but it's saying whatever the first argument is after the comma, in this case it's the value of the variable sum, will be put in the place of this placeholder. So the way we execute console apps is with Control F5. You can't see me do this, but I'm pressing the Control key, holding it down, and then pressing F5. And there our program runs. The first thing it does is, here's our first prompt. Please enter first number, and this console.readline just waits until the enter key is pressed, then it lets you continue on in the program. So I'm going to enter in a 3, then press enter. Enter second integer. I'm going to enter a 4, press enter. Then it goes through, adds the 2 numbers up, stores it in sum, and then here's our resultant output here. The sum of the 2 numbers is 7. And we can run it again. Control F5. 24, 26. Sum of the 2 numbers is 50. So in a nutshell, that's how you create a console app.